Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're here on the Movement Matters podcast. I'm your host, Maher Handaus, and we're pleased today to have our honorable guest, Khurram Sultan, owner and founder of ITDAcademy. And Khurram, if you want to tell us a little about what you do.
I run a basketball academy, and basketball has just been a huge part of my life growing up. So, being cultured, being a brown kid playing basketball, my parents always asked me, how are you going to turn this into something that you can do day-to-day living? And alhamdulillah, I've been able to figure out a way, and I guess just through persistence. But that's what I do for the most part. I do a ton of media as well. So I'm a part of Q Films as the marketing director.
Wow.
And I've had my own marketing agency prior to that as well. But juggling too many things can obviously lead to almost none of them being successful. So I've had to tone it down a little bit, figure out my niche, figure out what I wanted to do personally, and just took it from there.
That's amazing, mashallah. And so how much do you feel like obviously when you're playing sports, there's a level of work ethic that becomes involved, and how much do you feel like that work ethic that you develop from playing basketball, playing sports, I understand that you coach or have coached and trained basketball as well. How much of that do you think kind of reflects what you do as an entrepreneur?
I think it's huge because as I was growing up, I felt like everybody just had this energy and competitive fire as athletes do. They just weren't playing sports.
Yeah.
But as I kind of got a little bit older, I started realizing that people around me just might not be approaching things the same way. So when you go from a sports background and you're used to competing 6 times a week and trying to take the other person's head off in practice or like whatever it is, getting into the real world, it's almost like you're craving that same form of competition. And when it's not there, you apply that same desire and rush into work.
So I'm curious, you said you did basketball growing up, you moved now into media. Where did that transition kind of start? Was it, did you always have a love for media? Was it something that you developed as you went on?
It was definitely something that I was always passionate about in terms of having a camera around, because I found it I found a lot of fun looking at memories. Right. I moved a ton. I lived in Lahore. I was born in Lahore, Pakistan. I moved to Abu Dhabi, then St. John's, Newfoundland, Edmonton, so we're moving quite a bit. Yeah. And not just moving, but moving often, almost every year. Right. So to me, I would almost hold on to pictures as memories. So I'd look at it and reminisce and think back to the times like, oh, this was just last year, this is what we were doing. So as I kind of got older, basketball became a huge part of my life, and it was really hard to share it amongst the family just because they didn't understand it the same way. Right. And to me, it was something so precious and memorable that I wanted to be able to remember it to the fullest degree as I was in that moment, years down the road. So during one Ramadan, I didn't go out that was kind of hard to do being on a college basketball team. Is the team wants to go out, they feel like you're not, maybe they don't feel this way, but from the outside, I felt like they might feel that I don't want to be a part of the team culture. Right. I'm not trying to be a part of the environment, but that's just not what I did. Right. So for me, one year during Ramadan, I actually told myself that instead of doing anything else with my free time, I'm just going to learn how to do media. And during Ramadan, I was going to Good Life in the middle of the night. Obviously nobody's there, so I was just experimenting, having fun with it. Mm-hmm. And one video turned into another, and then it kind of started trickling down into a whole type of entrepreneurial side, because I could see things somewhat taking a shift, especially from like the entrepreneur type standpoint when it came to being able to grow something. Right. And I knew a few people that turned basketball into their life, right? Yeah. And before, the only way you could see it was you either had to play pro, and that was it. Yeah. Now there's different avenues kind of opening up. Mm-hmm. So I remember asking myself, who else is doing this, and why can't you do it? And there wasn't many people doing it. There's only 3 that I could list in my mind globally. Right. And then I asked myself, well, why can't I learn this? It might take some time. So it took me a few years, but like we were talking on off air prior, I would stay up all night. Yeah. And one of the things that I would do was just try to YouTube as much information, gain as much information, even though I didn't necessarily know where it was leading me to, but to be able to have that all in your library and then categorize it a little bit after. That's where the creativity kind of comes in.
It was an easy transition for you to say, okay, I'm going to cut back or slow down on basketball playing as much and get more into the media.
I actually ended up getting hurt. So there was a certain point where I was trying to take it to as far as I could take it.
Right.
And right as I kind of got hurt, prior to that, I'd always ask God, I'd be praying all the time, which one should I have my focus on? Because I care about both deeply. But when I got hurt, it kind of allowed me to take that pressure off and just focus on one thing, because I had no choice.
Right.
And while that happened, I started leveraging the fact that I did media and basketball well together. And I had some big names kind of see me in the online world, right, and ask me to join their companies or come down. And I was lucky enough to be flown down to Michigan, wow, and learn from a guy who taught Kyrie, Brandon Ingram,
wow,
and all those guys. So
yeah,
so that's how that's why I love media, because in terms of opportunity and whatnot, it opens up so many different doors, and it allows me to still have fun doing it.
Right. You know, it's interesting to hear. It sounds like, to an extent, your life has built you to be put into this position, or maybe, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or God, is putting you in these positions to kind of push you to what you're meant to be doing, what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm curious to hear your opinion on, like the trajectory of things, how things have went, especially as a Muslim. You described yourself, quoting your words, young brown boy playing basketball. Is that something that you feel like has definitely been an impact on you, or something that you reflect on?
In what aspect?
As in the trajectory of your life and how God plays a role in, kind of shaping things for you without you noticing.
Easily, like, I wouldn't be in the same spot that I am right now without God. And I think it's one thing to follow a religion, and then there's a difference in feeling it. And I'm not like a prime example, but I'm just sharing my experience in what's happened with me. So for me, it's been like, you kind of grow up into religion, right? And I don't know about you, but for me, my parents were always Muslim, so all I knew was being Muslim. But then moving to Canada, and when there's temptations and different things in front of you, you get to make your own choices. And I think what my mom did a really good job of was just keeping my heart very pure and clean, and giving me that feeling of like, okay, this, if it doesn't feel right, it most likely isn't right. So anytime I had that feeling in my heart, I could just instinctively know that God was telling me, maybe don't do this. So growing up, I kind of always just had that in the back of my head, but at the same time, I've had my time where I didn't fast for 1 or 2 years, where I was trying to just take basketball to a different level. And I felt like not fasting for a month would give me a month advantage by being able to train 3 times a day and whatnot. But the more I reflected back on it, it didn't feel right. It gave me that feeling that this doesn't seem like I'm doing something right. And then the more I could reconnect and refine it, and I think this comes with experience as you get older. What I love about fasting, and what I think about fasting now, is like you were talking about, we get all that free time and we don't know what to do with it. Throughout the day, we're doing stuff that gives us that natural high. Like, you eat food, you feel a little bit better. You have a little bit of coffee, you feel a little bit better. You listen to some music, you feel a little bit better. So I guess what fasting and what religion's really taught me is to be able to have clean highs. Like, you're able to fill that time up, say when you're fasting, with prayer. And then that prayer during that time brings you peace. So in that same aspect, when I feel like I'm doing, like, for example, a habit that I'm trying to get rid of, I can't just push it away without replacing it with something. So to me, I always replace that one feeling with a different feeling that I want to accomplish, maybe, or maybe over time that can give me the same feeling as the bad habit that I was trying to get rid of. Where
did your dream for basketball come around? Like, where did that come into play? Or I'll ask, did you ever play back home when you were young?
No, not at all. I played a lot of soccer. So growing up, I played a lot more soccer, cricket, obviously, because you live in Pakistan. But I didn't really see anything basketball-wise till I moved to Canada. In fact, it was St. John's, Newfoundland, when I was living there, that I was like, oh, wow, I brought my brother over, check out this game where they just throw a ball into a hoop and like it makes you feel nice.
Right.
So I remember when I got that first feeling of the ball going through, and I still remember to this day. I think it was grade 3, which is quite a long time now for me.
Yeah.
But it just did something to me where I was like, I like that. I want to feel that high again, right? Like, how can I get better at that? And then it turned into a little bit more of competition where your friends are really good at it and you suck at it, and now you got years to kind of catch up on it.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting way to kind of get into it, but the moment I fell in love with basketball and soccer, it was more the competitive side that kind of kicked in for me, where I just hated losing. I loved eating as a kid, a little too much. Yeah. You know, like even when I was playing on the provincial soccer team, my water bottle had Coke in it, right?
Wow.
And I didn't know it was bad for me. I was just like, I was growing up in so many different environments. I didn't really know like water was that good for you.
Yeah.
I was like, Coke gives me energy, so I'm gonna drink Coke, and I would get all these muscle cramps, and I didn't know why.
Wow.
But it was 2006, I would say, when I switched over to fully trying out basketball. Right. Partly because we moved to Edmonton, and I once again didn't know anyone. But I also didn't have the soccer ball to kick around to people. But there's a bunch of guys playing basketball.
Right.
So that got me into it, and after that, it was just.
What made you decide, okay, I want to do something on my own, entrepreneurship? I know you talked about as like a sports trainer, like, you know, or a basketball trainer, other people do this, why can't I do it? And I love that mentality, and that definitely resonates with me. But what was like your greatest inspiration behind what you're doing today?
I guess it's not, I don't only look at if they're able to do it and why can't I do it. I don't like doing it unless I feel like I can be one of the best at doing it either, right? So those things obviously get factored in, but I remember this one quote by Will Smith: being realistic is the most commonly traveled road to mediocrity, right? And I remember I used to watch that YouTube video as I'd fall asleep every night.
Amazing.
And wake up to it. And I didn't know what it was doing to me at that time, and now that I kind of understand psychology a little bit more and how your subconscious mind works and what you feed it. So as a kid, like, not as a kid, but getting out of my teens, I was listening to that obsessively every night because I wanted to wake up at 5 and go to the gym. And even though it was like midnight, that was the plan. Yeah. And I'd fall asleep to it, and I'd wake up and I'd hear it again. And it was just almost always on repeat. I ended the day with it. I thought about what I did throughout that day, and then in the morning, I wanted to attack the day all over again, but better. But that competitive edge when it comes to like anything, once you understand what that feels like, it's hard to not chase it. You know, like obviously it can slowly die down, but I think that's just one of those things that never really left from me. My dad was always super competitive. Me and my brother were always super competitive. So it was just something that kind of got instilled into us. And when it comes to media and like when it comes to entrepreneurship, it's almost like the same game. Like I remember thinking to myself, I never imagined myself working for anyone. Right? Like it was a weird thought to me. And when I was a kid, I was like, this is just normal. When I'm older, I'm like, okay, not many people are thinking that. Yeah. Right? So, sorry if I went off topic. I feel like I got lost in the maze that I call my brain.
That's all good. No, honestly, I love to hear it. And, you know, like you said, it's just like when you're living, eating, breathing, sleeping these mentalities, it's sleeping this way, thinking about these things 24/7, it's going to leave that imprint on you. It's going to leave that instilled in your mind for anything you do in your life. And again, why I love that so much is that applies to everything in life. That applies to, again, like today we discuss entrepreneurship, but really anything you do, you have that hunger, you have that desire. And this is a good time for me to plug my shirt. I feel like Kobe.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about mentality, talking about these types of things. He was like, for me, a great inspiration. I'm sure for you, being a basketball player, a great inspiration as well. Mentality-wise, kind of taught us how to attack life. And, you know, I'm curious to know as well is, you know, now that you've been doing this for a while, you've been doing basketball training for a while, now you have your media and everything. If there was what we like to call here golden keys, if there was a golden key you would hand off to a young guy young girl who wants to do similar to what you do, or any type of entrepreneurship really, what's a golden piece of advice, golden key you would hand off to a young entrepreneur?
I think structure. So one of the books that I recently read, and I was never a reader in high school, so let's get that off the bat. I hated reading. So one of the books that I recently read, Atomic Habits, and in it, James Clear talks about how both winners and losers have the same goals. One just has better systems. So that, I don't know why it's been sticking with me so much, but I think it goes back into how we approach things in life. And as a kid, we have big goals, big dreams, but we don't really understand how to get there. Right. And when we have big goals, big dreams, we focus so much on the goal that we don't want to look stupid in chase of the goal, right? Which kind of takes away from the whole process mentality. So a lot of the stuff that I teach in basketball and in the training, I think what it does for a lot of kids, especially at a young age, is it teaches them to really stick through the process more than the outcome, right, even though the outcome is what we're chasing. But when you can directly work on like the details and everything that you do to the most meticulous manner, that's when you can influence the outcome. So if there's one golden key I would have is not only have your goal, but have something that you can follow for some time, because then you just got to be able to reassess, because it might not work, but unless you actually track it, unless you actually see what you're doing on a consistent day-to-day basis, then it's really hard to make strides and to take your goals further.
Right. No, mashallah, amazing advice. I think 100% people don't really want to focus on it. And a common theme that we get from talking to entrepreneurs is people don't want to focus on failure. But it's such a common thing for every entrepreneur. Nobody, maybe here and there, but nobody ever snapped their fingers and became rich, snapped their fingers and became successful. You're going to go through those hurdles. So definitely focusing on that, something that's super, super important. And I'm curious to know from you is if you ever go through those struggles or hurdles, as people will call them, what do you kind of do to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself pushing forward when you might feel like that competitor's edge, that hunger might be lacking a little bit from what it usually is?
I think those two are two different topics for me personally. But when I lack motivation, it's different than when I just don't feel like I'm doing something good, right, if that makes sense. For me, when I feel like are you asking like the days where you just feel like maybe this isn't for me?
Like a day, it could be like you go, I'll say like some people say that, oh, I'm in a rut, or like, you might be performing the functions, you're doing what you have to do as responsible adults, we do what we have to do, but even as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're like, I gotta push myself. But that's what I'm talking about, those days, those periods, maybe business isn't going as smoothly as before. What do you kind of do? What do you find helps you push through those moments? If you don't have them, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I have plenty of those moments. I have too many of those moments. So when you're talking about mental health, one of the things that most people don't really know entirely about me, in fact, a lot of the basketball community doesn't, is I had to leave for a whole month because of like severe depression during the season. Wow. And it was really hard to kind of get back to it. But when it comes to having lows and different types of lows, as an entrepreneur, it was to me now, how I see it is how much do I love what I'm doing? And it's just a test. Because if I really love it, I'll figure out new things that I love about it. And then that'll get me out of the rut. But if I can't seem to find the answer, and I haven't had that yet, is each time I find something new. Each time I find a different angle that I was missing before, and it teaches me something new about myself as well in that process. So people always say you have to go through lows to kind of come out better on the other side. Right. 100% believer in that, because as ugly as it may seem, as dark as it may seem, when you love it enough, you're gonna find ways to kind of push through and keep on going. Right. And if you don't, then maybe it might not be for you, right, and you milk the cow as much as you could.
What does that kind of feel like for you? Like when you're going through that difficulty and you find a new piece, is it kind of like you feel rejuvenated almost, or like now a different level of love for it?
It's different levels of love for it. Obviously, reflecting back on why you're doing it to start off with is always like the biggest key, but then sometimes that just doesn't do it for you, right, because it might not be there. For example, I love hearing the impact you can have on a kid's life. Like it's to be able to change a kid's perspective on certain things, different books I've read that I'm able to share with them, different things and knowledge that I've read from the Quran, whatnot.
Yes.
It's always nice to be able to share that, and that's where I get my why from. But sometimes when you're not in direct contact all the time, you don't hear as much.
Right.
And then when you're trying to build stuff over and over again, it kind of gets filtered out, that thought.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think it'll always kind of come back in a unique manner, and it surprises you each time. It's hard to explain it, but going through it, once you feel that feeling, it's hard to be able to categorize it. You know, it definitely takes a whole lot of weight off my shoulders. I feel rejuvenated. I feel on top of the world, but I also don't let it get too high.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I think not staying neutral, but being humble.
Right.
You know, like not getting too high on yourself, not getting too low on yourself, but it's at the same time still feeling it, just not for too long.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Amazing, mashallah. You know what? Again, may God grant you success and continued success and consistency and happiness in what you're doing. May He grant you all these highs and these rejuvenations and success. Truly, I respect what you do. I respect you. I'm glad to have you here today, honestly, and I appreciate everything you said. I want to thank you again for being on. I have to give a shout out to Cafe Cappadocia for hosting us some delicious Turkish coffee.
Man, fantastic.
It was.
I told myself I can't have my third cup, and it's gone.
I don't question coffee. I just drink it and call it a day. But Khurram, if you want to just share with our viewers where they can find you.
This is the camera. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram on It's K Sultan. And my second brand account is ITDAcademy. And if you search on YouTube ITDAcademy, that'll come up as well.